Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Film Gamer Podcast, Season 3, Episode 16, also known as Episode 23. I have not decided on if I want to go by direct numbers or seasons, which is kind of arbitrary, as we all know. I mean, 2 episodes ago, I said that the Oscars review was going to be the finale because 13 episodes sounded good to me. But you know what? I think I want to go for the OC record, which, if you know, the television show in its first season premiered in late August and ran all the way till May. That is 27 episodes in a season, which is the most I've ever heard of and kind of insane. I'll get to a few TV reviews and, movie reviews and of course, the gaming news this week. But I think I am here to announce that I want to break the OC record. And for season 3, depending on if I can get a certain amount out before June or end in a traditional TV cycle, which would end at the end of May and then start at June, which, for those of you who watch it, The Bear usually premieres at the beginning of this season and just screws up the schedule for, like, the TV Academy. Anyway, that's what I want to do. I want to be a disruptor. But that's enough of that. Let's get to the weekend box office update. Movies make a lot of money on the weekend, so that's why I've decided to keep this in that, and I'm a fanatic. So without further ado, here are the movies that open this weekend. We have Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. This is the 5th Ghostbusters movie, and I have absolutely no interest in it. You know, Ghostbusters was something that I liked as a kid. I think I might have watched the TV show a bit, maybe had a figurine, but I never really saw Ghostbusters 2, at least that I can recall. When I finally saw Ghostbusters again, as an adult, I was kind of like, oh, that's it. And it's always been this funny thing where it could either be a hard R comedy, adult rated movie, or a family kids group. And both of those strangely make sense. And Ghostbusters has always straddled that line. And it's sort of weird that we've had now 3 Ghostbusters movies in the last 8 years, which is kind of crazy. And this one comes to us from the director of Monster House, who, in my opinion, is an inspired choice. He co-wrote The Last Ghostbusters. And The Last Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters Afterlife, was a solid, if unspectacular, hit. As a movie, I didn't like it that much. I liked the presentation of it and whatnot, but Jason Reitman, who directed, Juno, Up in the Air, Thank You for Smoking, and Labor Day, which I actually, hey, if you're looking for something on streaming, I would recommend that movie with Kate Winslet, Josh Brolin. Looks visually very nice, solid thing. My brother has it on DVD and Blu-ray, so recommend Labor Day. But Jason Reitman has not made anything good since, and his last movie was Afterlife. Now he's trading on his father, Ivan Reitman, who directed the original Ghostbusters Legacy, and he is going to direct an SNL movie, which I am also not looking forward to. But this movie I was cautiously optimistic about, and I haven't seen it yet. I will not see it in theaters. I'll wait for it on video, probably free, probably due to Sony's deal of output past the first window. The first streaming window, at least how they have it, is they have a movie, comes out to theaters, then it, I think, does premium VOD. They kind of flip-flop on it, if they want to do it or not, but then goes VOD $6.95 for a rental, decent price, but I didn't like The Last Ghostbusters, so that's not going to happen. Then they go to Netflix, and then after Netflix, they go to Prime and all of that, and, eventually some down the line TV and stuff. But Sony is really the only one who still believes in separating these windows, really, and it's kind of boggling to me. Other studios haven't followed suit, and they all just kind of lose money by putting stuff, like, honestly straight on their streaming services and then collapsing all those windows. So there's no premium $25 rental. There's no $6 rental. There is just, pay a fee for a subscription for a streaming service that they're all losing money on. It makes no sense. But Anyways, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, modestly priced movie. Cost about $100 million before publicity and advertising, and it's made the same amount opening weekend as the last two movies, even the female Ghostbusters one. So, I mean, not great, not terrible, pretty respectable, I guess. Goes to show, weirdly, since it's about in the same area that Ghostbusters Afterlife made, that this COVID era for movies did them pretty well. Some movies maybe overperformed more than they ordinarily would have, because they had no competition at the time. But, you know, this was a good release date for the new Ghostbusters. And, I'll watch it and give my opinion on it then. But, anyways, moving down the list and moving on. Dune Part 2. 17 million, solid drop, gave up about 400 theaters, many of which were IMAX screens to Ghostbusters. It's holding well. Currently 230 million domestic, and I have to say, I have this kind of cutoff date where the date a movie makes more than what I expected to, I kind of don't care anymore unless it's going to hit a major milestone. So this movie is doing, you know, over 500 million worldwide. The thing that I like to go for is kind of like a reverse Fantastic Beasts. Let me explain. For the amount of money that a movie makes in theaters, it should make a significant level up as it's going forward. Or if it's going down, as most sequels do, it should be relative to their budget. So, like the Fantastic Beast movies, the first one was solid, second one was terrible, the third one was mediocre in between. And with every successive franchise entry, they made $150 million less. What did Warner Brothers do when they noticed this? Absolutely nothing. They changed Johnny Depp out for Mads Mikkelsen, and they still kept with their franchise plans, thinking that they were going to get 5 movies out of it, even though each one was making 150 million less. Hey, I don't know. I don't work in Hollywood. I'm sure there was like a good reason. Maybe they wanted to stay in business with J.K. Rowling, but nonetheless, the first movie did like 800 million, and then the second one did 650 million, and then the third one did like 400 million, or maybe it was 400, 550, then over 700. But anyways, it was a significant chunk going down in the direction each of them. It still made over 400 million, but for the amount that they spent on it, and it is a beautiful looking movie, it wasn't a lot. So, anyways, with Dune, I, it will cross 250 million domestic, and then, I won't care. It'll cross, 650 million, and I won't care. There are people who like weirdly root for something like Oppenheimer to make $1 billion, and it's like it's a successful movie. Who cares? That money isn't going to you anyways. Like, I don't get that hung up on box office numbers where I have a parasocial relationship to the movies that I see. That's just weird. Those people have more time on their hands than even I do, and I don't even have a job. So that's just kind of a weird thing. But anyways, moving on. Kung Fu Panda 4 closing in on the numbers for Kung Fu Panda 3 domestically. This isn't quite a soft reboot, although it's been a while since there's been a Kung Fu Panda movie. They had the Dragon Warrior TV show, and that was good for the brand, getting people to watch it, and clearly it paid off because it opened the second highest out of any of the movies. And yeah, it's well on its way to beating Kung Fu Panda 3 at the domestic box office, which shouldn't be hard because that movie opened in January with no publicity at all. I remember thinking, oh, this is like opening this week, like seriously? And then it turned out to be a pretty decent movie, which I saw way later, but it did huge numbers overseas, which are going to be tough to replicate because the Chinese market, which this depended on a lot, has changed a lot, and they are a lot less welcoming to American films, even ones that are Chinese influenced, like Kung Fu Panda. But nonetheless, I'm sure the movie will make a lot of money and a lot of people happy, and maybe there'll be a fifth one. I guess you could liken it to the Ice Age franchise for its entries. That movie did about 5 movies before, it imploded. And if this one has kind of a similar quality drop off, then we'll definitely see that happen. But yeah, I'll watch it with nephew at some point. But, you know, um, I was never a huge fan of the Kung Fu Panda franchise, but the trilogy was remarkably consistent. This one isn't as good. But, anyways, moving on to Immaculate. This is a movie that Sydney Sweeney produced. She executive produced Anyone But You, her previous film that she was a main star in. And this one was a tale where she wanted to do it, wasn't selected, movie fell apart. She became like a bigger star, and then she took on more money and produced it herself and put herself in it. And the result is Neon, who's like an independent distributor, getting their highest opening that they've ever had at $5 million, which does not sound like a lot at all. Like the per theater average is $2,000, and that seems like weird for like a main star, but the rules are different now for actors, where they are kind of on social media. They just kind of gotta be in the social media eye and not make any mistakes, but have interesting stuff to say or something to promote. And it's like a Rotten Tomatoes reviews game rather than, a money game, because, you know, true to Hollywood in their accounting practices, no one knows what makes money and what doesn't. You can have a movie that costs $100 million and then they sell off, foreign rights and they make a profit before it even released, like Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets, even though that movie bombed. And then, you can have other movies where they, completely, The Adventures of Pluto Nash famously cost $100 million of Paramount's own money, and it completely collapsed. Um, you know, so there are different business opportunities. This apparently is a good one. Reviews are okay from my understanding. I haven't checked, but I will now. And so it's reviewing at, oh my gosh, let me tell you, Rotten Tomatoes gets worse every day for like finding something, because like streaming is just like completely messed up. Like what movies are new, it now goes by what movies are trending. But yeah, 72% critic score, 60% audience score. Immaculate in conception, if not always in execution. This religiously themed horror outing is saved by a divine performance from Sydney Sweeney. Yeah, Sydney Sweeney does not strike me as like an amazing actor. So this could be one of those like Poor Things situations where it's like they tried really hard and they do a lot and a lot happens to them. So it's like a very physical performance, maybe, as horror movies often can be. But yeah, I mean, Rotten Tomatoes tends to say any actor in the lead gives a great performance. So like they're not going to say anything otherwise. But nonetheless, I'm still looking forward to it. I saw Michael Mohan's last movie, finally, The Voyeurs, and it was okay, kind of dumb. So it, you know, uh, this guy has a pretty good visual eye, I will say. So the movie looked interesting. It had a decent trailer. I'll be interested to see how it sticks around. But the guy, it lacks humor a bit. But the script was well regarded. I believe it was on the blacklist, and that's what had them get it back. And yeah, the result is $5 million, and the distributor only employs 55 people, according to Deadline, so the overhead is low. So I guess that's like good. I don't know how that payout dispenses and everything like that, but hey, if somebody says it's a positive, who am I to argue? Okay, moving on. Arthur the King, the Mark Wahlberg movie, dog movie. Arthur the King is a terrible title. They should have called it Mark Wahlberg and the Dog or something more specific, but they didn't. Had good audience reviews. okay critic reviews, I suppose. And uh, this movie is gonna do well, even though they didn't spend a whole lot on it. It can feel like a missed opportunity when a movie like this, which, if it's as good as people say it is, 69% tomato meter, 98% popcorn meter, um, this could have been a bigger hit, but Lionsgate just never makes that investment, in particular for this kind of like family film. They don't. But it has, and it's Mark Wahlberg's like first movie in a lead in theaters in years. Like his last movie was a supporting role in um, Uncharted, and then he had Father Stu coming out. But those, faith based is kind of its own category. Supporting is kind of different. Um, he hasn't been in a theatrical movie, like this since, I want to say Mile 22, um, because Joe Bell got like a very minor release, and he did a lot of successful, streaming movies like Spencer Confidential, which was huge during the pandemic. But Instant Family was the last movie that he did, and that was well reviewed too. So, you know, the one thing I like about this new streaming era that we're in is that if it's streaming, it kind of lets you know that it's bad and the expectations are lowered, but it also heightens theater expectations, and they kind of match because if everybody has their own streaming service, then they'll just put it on streaming and, kick it to the can. Like Infinite, which Mark Wahlberg was in, was like one of the first Paramount Plus movies, and it was garbage. And they were like, this is so bad, we'll just drop this on our streaming service and nobody will notice. Boom, there you go. Tax write off or something like that. But, if it's good enough, Father Stew is like good enough. You know what I mean? Like it's not a horrible film. But anyway, going by the director, Simon Jones, he did The Family Plan for Apple TV. That was actually a pretty decent film, of course, because nobody watches Apple yet. Only has about 30 million people. It ended up being their most successful film that they have done for Apple TV. Um, so Mark Wahlberg has that. He has for Apple TV. He had Me Time for Netflix. He had um, this for Lionsgate. Uh, you know, he had Father Stu for Sony with Uncharted, and then Infinite for Paramount, and then Joe Bell was independent. So he's all over the place. Instant Family, I think, was even Paramount as well, and he produced it. So he'll kind of work with everyone. Um, he likes money, so that's why. He actually just gave a review about his thoughts on The Departed. The answer, thanks to Josh Horowitz, I believe, uh, revealed to us why Mark Wahlberg's hair is like it is in The Departed. He was growing out like or wearing his extensions for Invincible at the time. And Invincible, decent film, complete cornball, but it showed that he could open a movie on his own and was successful and kind of is responsible for what he's doing now. So I don't blame him for doing that, even though he, I guess, was supposed to play likely the Matt Damon role at the time for The Departed, and then got bumped to this character. Then he realizes, like, I'm playing this, third, fourth string character and stuff, and he's kind of thinking about, who he is as a movie star. And then he's like, this sucks. And then he reads the script and realizes Dignam is actually a pretty cool character. And then he said, with retrospect, he understands Marty, like Martin Scorsese, who directed The Departed, having to deal with Jack Nicholson, and then you have to manage the egos of Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio, and then you also have Alec Baldwin, and then Martin Sheen. So I guess it was a lot to juggle, and he realizes that, and then he realizes that he could have fun with the character, and as a result, he ended up getting nominated for Best Supporting Actor. His only nomination, really should have gotten one for The Fighter, because that's like a well put together movie that could have been bad. And he also should have gotten Best Actor for that. So, anyways, moving on, because I just wanted to say that the guy that he worked with on The Family Plan and Arthur the King, I thought this guy can kind of direct, and most buddies of actors who get to direct don't do good jobs. So, I look forward to what Simon Selin Jones does next because, The Family Plan was decent, even though it was 25% film. I thought it moved at a good clip and, you know, uh, was pretty enthusiastic, high energy. So, although what Mark Wahlberg said about in that movie that the kids would have their own song that they sing because the parents had that, like, kind of lame sing along. I can't even remember it now because it's a few months ago that I saw it, but I digress. Anyways, I look forward to Arthur the King. It'd be one that I'd encourage my parents to rent or something like that, so I can see it. Haha. Anyways, Late Night with the Devil had a bit of controversy this week because 2 or 3 title cards it uses AI. This is a movie that actually released at the last South by Southwest festival last spring, a year ago, and isn't coming out until now, which I find very weird. But it's by IFC Films, opened to 2.8 million, and had what was the highest opening in IFC Films' career. They're another independent channel. They've been around since like at least the 90s, and they have not really released anything major like they did Blackberry and they did Watcher. So a couple of recent years they've become more prominent. They handled Christopher Nolan's first film, Following, but their films don't make a whole lot of money. Personally, I find it weird with independent distributors like that and Yanis, who's the oldest film company in the world. They make these independent movies which kind of make no money. Um, and you would think with all their decades of experience that they'd get better at it despite limited resources. Like Sony Pictures Classics is another one. Their movies famously don't make money. I have no idea how they even survive as a studio. That's art for art's sake because people love it. But like they release a movie called Living, and it gets 2 major nominations for acting and screenplay, and it makes no money, and it gets such great reviews, and is a storied remake of Akira Kurosawa's Ikaru. Um, and I start to watch it, and the syncing is off, so I'm like, okay, forget this. This is boring. And then somebody I know watches it, and I'm like, how was it? And they're like, oh, it was okay. It's like, how can these movies sustain these independent film labels when they're just kind of my biases? I've always found independent films boring. I'm a movie has entertainment guy. You want to send a message. There's Western Union, as they say. I think it was Louis B. Mayer who said that. I'm not sure, but anyways, Late Night with the Devil was filmed like 2 years ago, released last year at a festival. It's opening now, highest opening for IFC Films. Good for them. Um, Main controversy, at least on film Twitter, is that it used AI from like 2 years ago to develop title cards, which will lead to people being out of work. But for a movie this independent, the way that I look at it is kind of like, well, it's not like Marvel doing it for Secret Invasion, which was awful. Like they just did a sloppy work on the opening title credits and used AI to do that, and that was really sloppy because it was just if you watch any TV show, and Three Body Problem, Halo, which I'm going to bring up soon, is another one where it's it's kind of like the Westworld opening or the Game of Thrones opening, where it's just kind of like miniatures of like something, and it's just so creatively uninspired. So if you're going to make crap like that with AI, on one hand, be my guest, but on the other, like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we saving the money for? It's kind of ridiculous. But on independent films, I get it. So, anyways, moving on. Nothing too much interesting. There's Imaginary with Lionsgate and Horror House, Blumhouse. Anyway, they make a lot of money. Their movies are cheap. This was one of them. Made over 20 million. It's better reviewed than their previous movie, Night Swim, which nobody looked forward to. They saw because it had a great release date and turned out to be terrible. But anyways, this is a step up from that. While I see this movie, I don't know, maybe in a few years, late night on Netflix or something. It's about a angry teddy bear that goes evil and kills. It's like Megan again. But anyways, if you want to see Imaginary, I'm sure it'll be something to watch. But moving on to Love Lies Bleeding, this is an A24 release. One of those, wow, this movie is well reviewed, but is it actually good? One of those, like A24, they give off high energy of like insanely high critic reviews and then really poor audience scores. And, it seemed, looking at it, like it's a throwback to 80s or something like that. But yeah, the audience score on it is actually quite high. So yeah, maybe it'll be good because it looked like a slight cut above, even though it was like artistic, a crime thriller. I wondered, okay, but is it going to be a crime thriller where it's like 90% talking and then there's like a 2-second gunfight at the end? But no, it appears to be like not just all tell and no show. The reviews for it are good, so I'm looking forward to this. Hopefully it shows up on some streaming service. I can never tell with A24. They bounce around. They've done some stuff for Apple and some stuff elsewhere. So, their movie, Civil War, which comes out next month, I'm looking forward to. Even though the super high, and I really do mean that, super high South by Southwest reviews by stoners who are hailing it as a masterpiece. I don't think it's that high, but the movie trailer for it is good. And I don't really like Alex Garland, but I'm interested. So yeah. Finishing off, there's Cabrini. I mentioned this a bit last week by Angel Studios, a religious movie. Doing solid business, it seems. Then you have Bob Marley and One Love at 95 million, making 1 million for the weekend. Looks like it's going to struggle to 100 million, which is funny to me because like a lot of people saw it and were like, you know, it made a decent chunk of money for Paramount, who really needs it. They actually have a bill due in 6 days that if they can't pay, they'll go bankrupt. So they're trying to find a buyer for their whole movie studio. So interesting time. Not many people are talking about it really, but yeah, Paramount owes a lot of money. They have to pay by the end of March. If they don't, they'll go bankrupt. So they're looking for a buyer. It really is as simple as that. It's just weird and sad. I don't want to think about it because it's like, okay, who's gonna buy a giant media company? Anybody good? Like, is a private investment firm gonna have like be in it for entertainment? Like this privately run company that was sadly eventually run into the ground by Sherry Redstone. Is it gonna be better now that business people are looking after it? I don't think so. But you never know. Capitalism can surprise you. I'm a capitalist. I'm also a socialist. So, like, social capitalist. I don't know. I don't want to get into it. Anyways, that is the box office top 10. And man, how are we doing for time? We are at 29 minutes. Holy crap. Man, did I divulge. Well, power through. Moving on. So, odd thing, I rented a game from the library, Lego Marvel Superheroes, and played with my nephew. Guess how many subscribers I netted from just playing that game? Not even with my own gameplay, but, watching us play co-op, and, half the time I'd go on my phone to look up how to get past something, and he would just play around. I got over 25 subscribers from that week of videos. Even more. If I think about it, it's like possibly 40 even. It's quite something. But the game is mini masterpiece, dare I say. Great to play with kids. Those Lego games never miss. You can play as a lot of different characters, and it's Marvel, so people like looking at that stuff. They're fun games to watch too because they just have good senses of humor. Um, so people like to watch games that look fun. I always see clips online of a more adult one called Ready or Not, where you're a SWAT team doing a raid and people may or may not have guns. So yeah, um, I like to look for games that are fun. Uh, Lego Marvel Avengers is a hidden gem. Came out 10 years ago and was even ported to Nintendo Switch in 2019. So, yeah, totally worth it to watch. And if you don't want to watch or play, or you want to play, watch, or whatever, you can go to my page and watch the series. It's on a playlist right now. Um, the only one I have on FilmGamer.com on YouTube. So yeah, there's that. And then also on YouTube, I have a movie clip of the month. I'll call it is the deposition scene from The Insider, which on TikTok has done nearly 1 million views. This is a movie that I saw, looked forward to, enjoyed, thought was well done, but there wasn't any scenes that stuck out to me. And then somebody played on Twitter the deposition scene, and I'm like, oh, people really respond to this. Well, okay. Well, let me just, record this and see what happens. And I like it more and more every time I see it. There are certain scenes in movies where you tend to like glaze over it, and then on rewatch, you're like, oh yeah, I like this scene. So, The Insider is that. Um, the Halo television series finale. Halo Season 2 was promised to be better than the first, and I regret to inform you that it is not. It is a different type of shit, pardon my language, than the first season. The first season was mediocre, but still somewhat inspired. It was torn because the Kyle Killen, who was behind the first season, at least that I know of, he was probably understood Halo. I mean, there's not much to understand. It's a pretty action-focused first-person shooter and whatnot, but he wanted to tell a story, and the story they wanted to tell was pretty not Halo-y, but they stuck it in there anyways. And you know what? It made sense. Like, there was stuff going on in it, and you're like, oh, okay, this is lame, and all the fan service stuff was kind of corny, but it felt like you're building towards beating the bad guy, you know? And it was pretty goofy. Like, there's a sex scene between Master Chief and some alien woman who they made up for the show. And then there's a subplot with an Asian girl who obviously isn't in the game series at all that people hated, but I actually liked because it gave somebody with an arc in it. So the whole first season was about a 6 out of 10. This season is like a 5 out of 10, if that. I want to say 4, because it tries to be a bit cooler, and it just kind of ends up taking less risks. And then it has two annoying characters, an Indian woman who I still don't know what her point was, and a British dude who's still around, and he's like psychoanalyzing Master Chief in the first few episodes. He's just like a standard British bad guy. Then he ends up in jail later, and I'm not even sure why. And then he's still around, and I'm just like, why are these characters here? What people thought about, the characters in the first season is how I felt about these characters in the second season, where anytime they show up, it's like, oh, well, we got to save money in the budget, so we'll just have these two pointless characters who are not in the series stand around talk in a room. None of the characters have really any meaningful relationship to each other. Nothing here is complicated or multi-dimensionalized. It feels like the characters even forget their relationships to one another. One of the characters in the game, Miranda Keyes, who's black and her mom is white. Dr. Halsey, who's the inspiration for Cortana, the AI in the game. I won't bore you with all this, but anyways, she says to her multiple times, refers to her as Halsey, Halsey. And then I'm like, isn't she mom? Why doesn't she call her mom? And the third time she calls her again, she calls her mom. And I'm like, yes, yes. But like, that relationship could be compelling drama. It's mishandled. The stuff with her dad, Captain Keyes, is also mishandled with her. I mean, to be fair, her character in the video games is pretty forgotten as well, and she's AWOL for most of this series, but like, it's not as bad as, I have to admit, the people online are right about this. The fans, they're like, Master Chief needs to be in his helmet, and I'm like, no, I want to see him act and stuff like that. Like, the argument that the showrunners made was like, we want audiences to register with who Master Chief is. Um, except that they don't really give him any compelling conflicts to deal with. So he's just kind of brooding, kind of looks like an idiot because he gets captured for some reason and then has to fight his team who's like in armor, and she's like thought that he died, and she kicks his ass, and then they don't beat each other up. It's just the whole season is, you're kind of like, okay, what's going on? We have to race to get to the Halo ring. Why aren't we on the Halo ring? And then they get to the Halo ring on the Halo TV series in the last 20 minutes of the last episode of the second season. This is modern television for you folks. Not only are the special effects back to being worse after a brief period of being good, they take 2 seasons to get to the Halo ring on the Halo TV show to set up like how the first game opens. I thought the whole season would be about the fall of Reach. It is 1 episode, vaguely, and it doesn't involve Noble Team or any of the characters from that. And it's just with the lore, I don't understand how it's like, okay, you follow everything or you make your own way, and toss a few winks in there. But what shows do now is they want to follow like the fan fiction books and BS like that. Like, I don't get it. Like, yeah, I had a few friends in elementary and high school who read the Halo books, like First Strike and Fall of the Reach and that kind of stuff. And I I guess you could get into it, but it's just, either way, they're not picking a lane, and it's not clear storytelling. Like, they introduce the Arbiter, or a Arbiter, who maybe they'll introduce a new one, who they don't like. They make him look badass, and then he fights Master Chief, kicks his butt. I think it's him. The aliens like are indistinguishable on this show, and then he fights him again at the end, and then gets his ass kicked, and then, oh, hold up, reversal, turns around, kicks the alien's ass, and then the alien says a bunch of stuff in its alien language, which on Paramount Plus doesn't translate unless you manually switch over the captions to closed captioning, which then translates everything in terms of like how they're looking and stuff. Like, it's blind closed captioning. It's not native subtitles. I don't know why I'm the only one who has this problem. Maybe because like 5 people watch this show, but yeah. Um, I'd still like to see a season 3. Like, it's barely hanging on there, but I just don't get why this is so difficult. Like, you either make an action show. Oh, like, why aren't the people who made Banshee making this show? Or you make a drama. I don't care, but like, make it multidimensional. So much of Halo, the TV series, is them talking and being sad about things that don't even matter. And it's like, oh, you need to talk to your son. And it's like, who? Who is this guy? Like, what's he doing? He's supposed to be a bad guy, but he looks sullen all the time. So am I, I, anyway, Halo TV series is garbage. Only hardcore fans apply. That's why I wanted to let you know. I'm going to skip over a few topics I have here. My brother got mad at me. Well, I wouldn't say got mad, but was annoyed that I gave Dune Part 2 and Anyone But You 3 stars on Letterboxd. And I would just like to refer you, if you're listening, to Ebert and Roper discussion of War of the Worlds and The Longest Yard. War of the Worlds and Longest Yard, 2 Paramount movies from 2005. were movies that I saw at the drive-in that when I saw War of the Worlds, I'm like, wow, I want to make movies. And then I saw The Longest Yard, and I'm like, wow, this sucks. And that was like back to back. But anyways, they both made a lot of money. And Ebert and Roper have this discussion where it's kind of funny because Ebert is kind of like an intellectual critic, and Richard Roper is kind of like your uncle, who's like, yeah, this is awesome, good time at the movies, slam bang thrill ride, that kind of thing. Anyways, and Roger Ebert gives War of the Worlds 2 stars and Longest Yard 3 stars, which is funny because Longest Yard is not a good movie. It takes all of its jokes from the original, um, and it's the beginning of Adam Sandler kind of not trying in a very special way, apart from the blip that Click was. But anyways, Richard Roper drags Roger Ebert, and he's like, so if you're telling me you have your $10 for a movie ticket and you would rather see The Longest Yard than War of the Worlds, and he goes, you know what? No. Funny enough, it doesn't work that way. Um, you know, you see E.T. and then you see this film, you'll see that War of the Worlds is half the film E.T. was. Reviews are relative, and if you want to read my review, you can read it in the paper or on the website and stuff. And then Robert just kind of blows past it. It's like, well, Longest Yard gets 3 stars and War of the Worlds gets 2 stars. And War of the Worlds is a fantastic movie with some writing problems in it, but I understand both points. But, you know, when I give Dune Part 2 3 stars and Anyone But You 3 stars, I am rating 2 different movies. I can tell you which one's better. Like, Dune 2 is a more accomplished film. Anyone But You has heart that Dune Part 2 doesn't have. I personally like Anyone But You while recognizing it's not as well made a picture. But, it tells a complete story. So, it's all relative. If I were to ask me which one I like better, Anyone But You. But, does that change anything? No. So think what you will. I'm going to plug my Letterboxd. It's just Film Gamer. I've about 988 films logged, close to 1,000. I have over 300 followers. I'm always working on an annual best of list. My current 2024 film being The Beekeeper, and last year's being the Netflix film Fair Play, which I picked because it could only have been done in the last 5 years. Now, to close out the film angle of this episode, on development stories, Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney from Anyone But You are looking for new projects together, and I thought about submitting my script to them. So I thought I'd share with you guys just how I send out scripts, or how I tell you I send out scripts, and maybe I've done it once, but really if I did it with any sort of consistency, maybe I'd have a job by now. But nonetheless, sending out scripts. There are trade magazines. They're called trade magazines because they're in trade publications that are mostly owned and controlled by the major movie studios. And a lot of these are hype pieces, so they'll mention the actor booked a gig for a major movie from a major director, and they'll mention in those articles on Variety.com and Deadline.com what is the agency that represents this person. So you can find out, and they'll mention the lawyer and the management and the agent, and you can go to those websites and go to those managers and look for those managers listed and email them and ask for those managers, or you can call those numbers and ask for those managers, and that's where you send your scripts, basically. It's like a 1 in a million shot doing it, but I'm sure if you do it with regular consistency, you could, and you have to have a fully written script, which I have but one, and it has to make sense to them and whatnot. I sent out a script to Mark Maron and his people, and of course they asked me about packaging, just simply asking, is there money here? The answer was not yet. And frankly, I'm glad it hasn't progressed because I want to work out more of the story kinks. So I'm happy about that. But if you write out a letter, like even not even just typing, like type on a typewriter, or write by hand, something that looks different and will stand out. If you send that to somebody, catches them on the right day, or they're some junior executive of an assistant or something, they'll be like, oh, this is, it's their entire job to sort through emails. Maybe something will stick out. That's what you do. If you're a script writer, want to write a script, or want to get a story scene, just send it out. But you have to be willing to send it out. And that's really tough, because I was even thinking about this when I was writing my script. I'm like, okay, hypothetically, Sydney Sweeney, known producer now, gets a hold of my script. I'm going to assume that I can only talk, like, this is the only time that we're going to interface. I write a letter that gets sent to her agency, her agent reads it, and then relays what they can from that letter. What do they take? An offer of money. Where's the money? So I was thinking, like, okay, would I be willing to get paid $110,000 for my script? And that's giving up credit. That's giving up everything. This script that I've worked now 7 years on, almost 7.5 years. Would I be willing to give that up? Well, it's not 7.5. It's like 6.5. I was off by one. But would I be willing to give that up for $110,000? The answer is yes. But then I think about it. It's like, oh man, a couple weeks ago, it was a story in the LA Times where a guy sold a script, and it was going to be a little straight-to-video thing, and then Gerard Butler signed on as a lead, and the budget went up to $45 million. And he got paid incredibly low, like essentially what I'm asking for now. But he's, also American, and I'm Canadian, and like $110,000 would mean a lot to me, and would make me feel legit, and then maybe I'd move on or something to another story. I'd have the confidence to continue. But it's everybody thinks their idea is amazing, and the truth is that it's not. But there's those ones that are, and they can make $100 million and make you rich. Like, everybody has the dream of making one good movie that gets seen forever, and people dine out on that. Many screenwriters do that. And that's my thought, and everybody's thought is like, what if I just make one really good movie? Like, what if I just work really hard on one good script, and it's a classic, perfect script, and it gets sent and it gets made into a movie, and that movie makes a lot of money. I'd never have to work again. So, that's the dream, and that's the dream that people hold on to. But I'm telling you, if you're sending out a script, you have to be prepared for a few things. Number one, if you're sending out a script, you have to be willing to give the script. And if you give the script, you have to be willing to be ripped off. I'm not saying you should, but I'm saying you have to, there's that saying, if you love something, let it go. If it returns to you, it's yours. That applies here somewhat, because Tim Westland, a screenwriter who I'm working with now, said, I feel most people are lazy, and they're not willing to put in the work themselves. So they'll try and get a movie any way they can, but they won't put in the work themselves. Most people, if they hire you, they want to hire you for your work. They don't want to, just take your idea and leave. Even with that movie, that's a loose remake of Merloose, The Holdovers, which is being sued over and hashed out in the writers' guilds and whatnot. The Alexander Payne's screenwriter for The Holdovers, David Hemmingson, wrote his own script. I saw through the Writers Guild Foundation, he wrote like 23 drafts. And, there are some familiar beats there, but he put in the work to, like, disguise his movie. This isn't like a hack job where, there was a dispute, and I don't know the details, with Jurassic World, where Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver were claiming credit for it, and Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly rewrote their script, and it was a question of like, well, did they have their script to begin with and then rewrite it from the beginning? Because if they did, even if they completely changed it. If they rewrote their existing script, then they have to be credited, and that's what ended up happening, even though the final was completely different other than a line. You know, it was proved that it was their story. So, I mean, that's one thing they're discussing with this holdovers case, which, by the way, the solution to that, if you're the writer of Luca, who presumes that the holdovers was stolen from him, I would say get the rights, which went into the public domain and then lapsed out, of Merluce, the movie that Alexander Payne claims he took from. You find that, you track down the estate, you get their permission. Are they, this is a French film from 1935. Are they even following this? Maybe, I don't know. But you reunite with the filmmaker of Merluce or his estate, because the guy is long gone now, and you get their permission or whatever have you. And then you go back to Alexander Payne and say, hey, not only do I have this script, I also have, the remake rights. And then, maybe he gets some cash out of it, or a cash settlement, or splits it with the estate or something like that. Like, it's a successful film. Like, let's all make films together. That's what I say. You know, when people make movies, when they made Uncharted, Avi Arad was already producing it, and Charles Roven, who's a great producer, just won Best Picture with Oppenheimer. He was told by Tom Rothman and the makers at Sony of like, hey, you guys really need to partner on this. It's better than, doing your own movie, pitching it, and then taking over the rights. Just get in bed together on this. And that's sort of what they did, and it was a bit odd, but the movie was successful. And it'll be interesting to see going forward. But, they teamed up. They didn't kind of take each other down or have, a competing script room where they pitched ideas like they tried with and failed with Star Trek, or what they tried and still sort of failed with the Transformers 5 at the time. I think it was The Last Night. Man, that story was a mess. But it doesn't have to be if you just all kind of team up and somebody takes a piece here and somebody takes a piece there. So you have to be willing to share your idea. That's it. Give out your script. Be willing to have it be stolen. Work for it. Fight with it. Register it with the Copyright Office, of course. But be willing to give it up and hope that the movie is made, because making a movie is the hardest thing. Just finishing up with some gaming points, I maintain that Xbox for Series S should add disk support. They have USB 3.1. I'm pretty sure that's good enough to add a disk drive to the games. And as we all know, disk drives in Generation 9 are basically just license checkboxes that confirm that you have the license to play the game because you have the disc with you. So, they could totally add that to Series S. And I honestly think that the shelf space for Xbox, which they so crave at the retail stores, which admittedly are dying, but it still is an important value proposition. Add a disk drive, a detachable disk drive for the Xbox Series S, Microsoft. Phil Spencer, if you're listening, do that. And then you'll get a bit more shelf space and get a foothold. I'd strongly recommend doing that. I know the Series S is already outselling the Series X, but still do it because, you want to make yourself bigger. And Xbox can be just as big as PlayStation, so do it. And to the developers working for Xbox or third party, I would say do a small 6-hour single-player game with add-on multiplayer like they did in the late 2000s, and add on a bit of multiplayer, and then continue with the support of the multiplayer onward with the DLC and the whatnot. You don't need to do a massive open world. You don't need a 13-hour campaign. You just need, I would say, if you want to go further and are doing the full-priced game thing, have an hour for every $10 that somebody spends on the game. So if the game is $90, then have a 9-hour single player campaign. And then just have, multiplayer. The years that Naughty Dog spent developing The Last of Us Part 2 multiplayer, which they then scrapped because they spoke with the Destiny people who are like, oh, this is going to collapse after 6 months. Well, so did Uncharted 4, and that multiplayer is decent. At least we have that. We don't have this. So, stop chasing quadruple A live service games. Don't make the same mistake as streaming of like lowering yourselves and limiting yourselves of like, oh, well, we can only make this type of game because that's where the money is. No, the money is where you're good. The money is where you're good at. So make what you're good at, make that single player game, and then, tack on a multiplayer like COD Zombies did late in development and see where that goes. And then if that attaches to something, then support it. Um, that's why I keep adding box office to my podcast because it gives consistency and it gives me something to come back to. Um, and it's more views with my podcast with it than without it. Um, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe I just like talking the numbers. But yeah, anyways. One thing I forgot to mention last week was Nintendo Selects, the greatest hits lineup of Nintendo games, has been speculated to be coming back because the Nintendo games have fallen out of print in terms of like the catalog of games that you can buy. So people suspect that that's because they are, coming back just in time for the Switch 2 next year to boost or goose sales of the Switch 1. Either that or they're Nintendo, as usual, is planning to like super rip off its customers and then have maybe they're Switch 2 only or something, or they're not backwards compatible. Given the way PlayStation 5 and some of the last gen, next gen remasters have been handled, they've gotten a bit greedier because these games take so much longer to develop that they need the easy money of remasters becoming more popular. So, with Nintendo, I wouldn't be surprised either way. I'd hope that they do like a lineup, but they're not often inspired about this stuff, so we'll see. I still have Nintendo Wii U games to play through, so I'm fine. I don't think I'll participate in the Switch generation, even though it's a pretty cheap buy-in. $259 a year in, and then you can play handhelds like my brother does. But I'm a big screen gamer. I if I wasn't, I would have beaten Cyberpunk already on my PC. But anyways, just a few more spring cleaning things. Fall Guy came out. The reviews for it say that it's great, but same with Civil War. This is South by Southwest. Pay attention to the one person who didn't like it, and said, it's a bit false, like it's a bit fake, a bit try hard. I want it to be good. I'll watch it, even if I have to go alone in theaters, because there are so few movies that interest me coming out in theaters. This is the first coming out first weekend of May non-Marvel movie to open on that date in like 20 years. Kind of insane because Marvel has fallen off, as has been exhaustively said on Twitter. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Fall Guy. Hope it's good. I'm sure it'll be okay. And we'll see. That's that. Sandler, Adam Sandler, highest paid actor according to Forbes for last year. This isn't a surprise. He has been consistent. He made movies with Sony, and then right as they were dropping off, he went straight into business with Netflix and does super well there, and has been a Netflix employee loyally for like 10 years. And every once in a while, he'll do something like Hustle or something like Spaceman, which is just an oddity. I think I mentioned it a few episodes ago. Like, it's a boring drama with great special effects from the director of Chernobyl. Yeah, Sandler just consistently doing his shtick and playing to the hits, playing to his audience, having a good time, bringing his friends along. People are undemanding. What can I say? I wish that he would make something funny, because you watch Happy Gilmore for the umpteenth time and you're like, this is hilarious. You watch Billy Madison, this is great. You watch The Waterboy, solid stuff. I haven't seen Big Daddy since I was a kid, but I would presume it's okay. Mr. Deeds, I still remember seeing at the drive-in, and it has a few laughs. So, do better, Sandler. I mean, the problem is that he's such a loyal guy and is loyal to his friends and works with the same directors and writers. So he's not really, unless some really powerful director, like say Christopher Nolan, wants to hire him, and then wants to, stake their career on working with him, similar to how Paul Thomas Anderson did, and like really wants to get the work out of him and motivate him. Like that's tough. Really at this stage in his career, he's made enough money and has those connections that I doubt he'll be, driven to do something. He could probably just coast to like a supporting actor Oscar win in his like 60s, late 60s, early 70s or something like that, like Jack Palance for City Slickers 2 or something, because that's, where Sandler is going. He'll always be rich because he's just, savvy enough. He has a good support system and team around him. He doesn't need to be funny to me and you. He just has to make people happy, even if they don't remember his newer movies, because his legacy is enshrined. Doesn't have to do what John Cena does for Ricky Stenicki, or the Oscars, which is a good version of that, by the way. Just he gives good performances both at his presentation of the Oscars, where he's nude, but also in Ricky Stenicki. The problem is that the script surrounding Ricky Stenicki is not good, so don't watch it. It's a boring movie. It's like 3 scenes where like nothing happens. It's like this happens and then this happens and then this happens, and like half of that movie takes place in like a house during like a wake. It's like, and you're like, okay, like is this the whole movie now? And you could tell like they couldn't decide. It's like Act 1, sort of like a bachelor party at a bar. That's like one scene, and then Act 2 is like at a house, and then Act 3 is like at work, where he's just still there, and yeah, it's just kind of odd. I'm like, they made a movie of this? Like, the Peter Farrelly won an Oscar for like Best Picture and Best Screenplay. He has more. Peter Farrelly, the director of Dumb and Dumber, has more Academy Awards than Martin Scorsese, which is just kind of funny. Now, granted, he's a director who won for producing and writing, so it's kind of like a cheat, but nonetheless, I just kind of find that amusing. I still haven't seen Green Book though, so maybe I'll watch it and it'll be really good. But he's 2 for 2. That's just the way Hollywood works. Another Prime Video movie, Roadhouse, which I saw the other night. It's okay. Like Doug Lyman, the improviser, improvised a lot. It clearly on the script, which needed more improvisation, or needed more work, really. Jake Gyllenhaal is good. He brings it. The cast is solid, but it's just the story isn't very good. The fights are okay. There's enough action there. Gyllenhaal brings it, but it's like fine for a streaming movie, and that's pretty much why it was made the way it was made. Allegedly, they got the offer by Jennifer Salke, who runs Amazon Prime, to do it for a theatrical for $60 million, or get $80 million and do it for streaming. They took more money. Hey, can't blame them. And Gyllenhaal explained as much when Roadhouse premiered at South by Southwest. It has a few shortcuts. It is the worst audio mixed movie that you will hear this year, maybe. Action scenes really loud. Dialogue scenes can barely hear them. Feels like there's sound effects missing. Some of the fights, I think it's the first or second one, a few of them are like CGI arms. and then it switches to first person and does a few weird things. And you're like, okay, why is this? This is odd. This is taking me out of it. It's like an experiment that doesn't work. But again, Hall, I like him in this phase of his career with like Ambulance, where he's just like, let me just do the guy movies while I still got the bod, and he looks shredded in this, and he looks fantastic. Don't know how he does it. Whatever you're doing, keep working as long as you can keep your health. Because he's a good enough actor where he doesn't even have to be fit. He could be chunky or something like that, like have a regular dude bod, and people would be like, wow, like if he did a movie where Gyllenhaal was just like flabby, somebody where it's like you could poke him or something like that. Somebody described John Krasinski that way before he got shredded. People would respond to that because the the look of that age is over, you know. So people want to see somebody who looks like a human being on screen, and Gyllenhaal is kind of too good looking still. So if he like did his ugly movie now, where he wasn't shredded and just kind of looked like like a regular dude, even though he's pretty good looking. Jake Gyllenhaal, that's your next step. That's your roadmap. Just play a regular guy, not even in an action movie, like just in a drama. Do like a comedy because he's funny enough. Like he's proven to be really funny in the press junkets and stuff like that. So yeah, do that, Jake. And yeah. Oh, and the final thing I just wanted to say was that a new trailer came out for Alien Romulus. Hey, it's from the studio that brought you Prey. Fede Alvarez, I liked his directing in, Don't Breathe. I did not like Evil Dead. I did like his version of The Girl in the Spider's Web, um, but he kind of, according to reports, screwed up the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake he was producing by kind of fiddling with it too much. So he's doing this, which kind of feels like it's following the Predator playbook and is like a sort of back to basic style movie, but it looks too evocative of Alien. And Predator was never really that kind of classic on the level of Alien was. Like, Alien is very elevated. So, for him to kind of do that, it'd be fine if it was like a sequel to Aliens. But it looks more like Ridley Scott, and we've been down that creepy corridor too many times. So it's like, will I watch it? Yes. Will it be the hit that Disney wants it to be? I don't think so. People will just wait for streaming because of what they did with Prey. So, I mean, we'll have to see. But it looks solid enough. It'll be middle of the road, shiny. But, there are better things to look out for. So, next time I do this podcast, I will give you guys like really top high quality recommendations of like films and games to play, hopefully. And that'll do it for the Film Gamer this week. Ran a bit long. I was a bit more organized this time, but I will try and cut it down. It's a big one. So thanks for listening, and I'll hear from you guys next week.